Hello, it's me. So over here in the UK, we've had a scandal. We have lots of scandals and much corruption, about which not much gets done about. No accountability. Um, anyway, so there's been this grooming scandal in the UK, and I'm going to watch a little bit about it and just find out a bit more. So this is from GB News. Let's see what the coverage is like.
Do you know that 99%
After
of
the
supplements
advert.
in the world have no
And that's another
sucrose
video,
in them?
actually.
A combination of fillers, fine.
Anna, let's start on the grooming gang scandal, shall we, and the Casey report.
Yeah, I mean, this is a report which says, definitively there should be a national inquiry, which will probably not be news or anything new to your viewers, because this channel is to be commended for saying consistent.
So, as we start, a bunch of Pakistani men were alleged to have taken young white girls here in the UK and abused and sexually trafficked them. So that was the allegation. And for years, there were like rumour reports coming up from these areas saying that not only was this appalling, because it's appalling, but the British authorities, locally and on a national level, were ignoring it and literally just nothing to see here kind of attitude.
For months that we should have a national inquiry, and the fact that Keir Starmer had to commission yet another report that we've all paid for through our tax money to tell us things that we already knew, I think is absolutely disgraceful. He should have ordered this report 6 months ago. This is yet another monumental U-turn. It's a complete betrayal, in my opinion, of the victims who deserved this to happen earlier, and the fact that he banded people who were campaigning for this, people on a far-right bandwagon, is disgusting, because that is exactly the attitude of pushing things, refusing to actually look at all the details, covering things up, which has caused this problem in the first place. So frankly, I think he should resign.
David, should Sir Keir Starmer be in the country, or should he have been yesterday when this report dropped? I think Downing Street had it, how long, Anna? Maybe 10 days?
About 10 days ago.
Well, yes, people will say that. Obviously, G7 is a major international stage which he has to be on, and all world leaders are there. So I don't think he had much option in reality. But yes, it's a criticism that we levied at him. Why is he not here to take the flag? It always seems to be convenient that he's away when these things happen.
He scuttled off to the G7 and let this break, and so he didn't actually have to face the flag. They had this report 10 days ago. It was.
So on the question of whether or not Keir Starmer should resign, yeah. But this is just one major scandal in a short time. They haven't been in power long, and it's just been one thing after another, one implementation of one unpopular decision after another. He is widely reviled here in the UK. Nobody's got any time for him. There's this footage out there of him going to a pub for lunch when he was on the campaign trail, and the landlord going bananas and screaming that Starmer will get out of his pub, and it became so agitated that Starmer's minders, his protection team, had to hold the landlord back. It was just absurd. But this is who he is. He's a guy who was a lawyer who stood up for human rights, apparently, and got into power and promptly started ignoring everybody's rights.
Number 10 could have timed the release of this report on any day. Why on earth
Yes.
wasn't it released about
Well,
10
it's
days
very
ago?
convenient, isn't it? Very convenient. There's probably been time for that.
Exactly.
And again, it always, when he makes these U-turns, it's always because of somebody else. So Louise Casey is the reason for this U-turn. It was the OBR which came out with some new economic figures, which was the reason for the U-turn on the winter fuel allowance. It's not us, Gov. It's somebody else who's given us some new information.
And sometimes it's something completely imaginary. I mean, the whole reason for having to raise taxes, which of course he said he wasn't going to do, was because of his imaginary black hole. So,
and I said to you both off air, actually, even people like Jeremy Corbyn, who politically I don't, particularly align with, to say the least, at least you know what he stands for. He stood for the same thing for many, many decades, same as Nigel Farage, same as President Donald.
Jeremy Corbyn here in the UK was, when he was running for power as leader of the Labour Party, which is the party that Keir Starmer is head of, was politically assassinated via the media papers. Is that a good way of putting it? He was called an anti-Semite and a man with a documented past of travelling abroad and fighting for the rights of racially oppressed people across the planet, including the Jews and, of course, the apartheid in Africa and all that, was called an anti-Semite because there were people who were said to have said anti-Semitic things in the party, and he was caught between a rock and a hard place, ultimately trying to act and also trying to do the best for the individuals accused of these things, in making sure that they weren't, how can I put it, tarred and feathered before any findings became apparent. But it was just a pile-on, effectively.
Trump, they've got principles and they've got a vision in their mind. With the Prime Minister, I just feel like you don't know what he stands for, you don't know what he cares about, what he's authentic about. He flip-flops in the wind, and I think he plays politics very badly.
They say that a good Prime Minister is a signpost, tells the country where he's taking the country. A bad Prime Minister is a weather vane, and there's absolutely no doubt what Keir Starmer is. He is the biggest weather vane that we've seen.
He doesn't seem to have a guiding star. I mean, this is where we're aiming for. Prime Ministers like Tony Blair, come with me in this direction, this is where we're heading to. You don't seem to know what he stands for.
Yeah.
And now we'll get on to Tony Blair, because the whole thing about the WMDs back in the day, if you know, you know, started an entire war when there were no WMDs, just the suspicion of WMDs. I look back at those times and it's horrific. And I think there's an arrest warrant up for Blair in a couple of countries for being a war criminal. And on this news article, they're saying, "Oh, you knew what Blair stood for." Yeah, because the Americans were telling him what to say.
Well, he's guided by others, isn't he? As you say, the OBR or Baroness Casey or whoever's talking at the time.
Or whatever minority comes along that takes his fancy. Look about, taking the knee for the Black Lives Matter. When it came to trans women, rather than standing up for the women of this country, who are over half the population, he goes for a minority. He's a disaster, and the sooner he's gone, the better.
And let's start with that Casey report that was presented to Parliament yesterday, shall we? And lots of...
We do know what Keir Starmer stands for, really, because when a news reporter some time ago now asked him whether he preferred politically, as a political home, Davos or, Davos or the Houses of Parliament, he said on national TV, Davos. He's the British Prime Minister. Davos.
Our viewers questioning the Tory record on this. We've known about this scandal, rumblings and rumours and whispers of this scandal since the early noughties, and many people saying the Tories didn't do enough. And looking at Kemi Badenoch yesterday at the PMQs and her outrage towards Sir Keir Starmer, pointing at the fact that she was MP for 8 years. In fact, she was Children's Minister and Women's Equality Minister, and not once did she call for a national inquiry until 2025.
Yeah, while the advert's on, it's true. They're all tarred with the same brush.
Fine.
Ultimately speaking, the outrage that these politicians are feeling is balanced, on the other hand, by the fact that they were there and they were able to do something about this themselves previously. Maybe not Kelly Badenoch herself, but certainly the party that she represents.
One of the things that we did do to try and get to grips with the issue, I'll use one example, the Grooming Gangs Task Force, which was a police Home Office funded initiative that has led to hundreds of the perpetrators of these kinds of offences being arrested, thousands of victims uncovered. Of course, one of the main driving forces for us to look into this more deeply was the J inquiry into child sexual abuse. That's an inquiry that we set up, that we funded and we supported. There is a whole range of other work that we've done in relation to child sexual exploitation, violence against women and girls, that I think we can be proud of in government. And actually, one of the reasons why we've been calling for an inquiry and that we were disappointed it took so many times for Labour to get on board with the need for this was because we're open to the idea that we may need to go further, but that doesn't diminish the positive things that we did do in government, even if there is more still needs to be done.
Yeah, but Mr. Mullen, you've only been calling for an inquiry when critics would argue it seems fashionable to do so. Your party were in power for 14 years, some of those with the Lib Dems, of course, but you didn't. The fact of the matter is, despite what you just said, you did the Grooming Gangs Task Force and whatever else, the fact of the matter is,
yes,
did you call for a national
squeaky bum
inquiry
time
during
now.
your
It's
time
all a
in
bit
power when
awkward
it
for him.
mattered?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of whatever else. I think things like arresting and investigating the perpetrators of these crimes, setting up the inquiry that led to, in a large way, the further demands for a national inquiry specifically into grooming gangs.
Yeah, but it was
were very
under
important and
duress.
significant steps that were taken in the
Interrupt,
right
Minister.
direction.
Apologies.
And it's actually
sorry to interrupt.
those things were things that we did in government. And when it comes,
Victims during that time were calling for a national inquiry.
Yep.
Sure. As
Sure,
I've said
sure.
on a number of occasions,
Yes,
we set up the J inquiry, which was a broader look into child sexual abuse that uncovered further details and concerns around these allegations of grooming gangs, and that then naturally led to us thinking how we could go further, and we did do that in many respects. And actually, it's not about jumping on a bandwagon, it was about listening to, quite rightly, the calls from MPs, Conservative MPs included, like Robbie Moore,
It's these literally polishing a turd in front of our very eyes,
behind those calls for an inquiry in opposition,
and showing it off.
And the question is, why
Look
did
at my
Labour fight
turd.
so hard against
Yes?
that?
Let's talk about
Isn't it
the
lovely?
grooming gang scandal, shall we?
This is British
And
politics
findings of the case
in a
report
nutshell.
That were presented to
A group
Parliament
of
yesterday.
people
What did you make of what
in
you
very august
It's really
surroundings,
odd when you come on
polishing
a show like this and
turds
talk
in
about
order to
politics or
try
something, generally
and
speaking,
fool the British public
because
and
politics
the
to
world
this,
generally.
You almost feel cheap in a way talking about the politics
Oh,
of this issue.
goodness.
I think,
Well, that's enough of that nonsense. This is me signing off, and until next time, look after yourselves.